My dad had always been a man of surprises. Sometimes they were fun, like tickets to a baseball game or a spontaneous weekend getaway. Other times they were confusing. So when he called me last week and said, "Come early, we'll celebrate," I didn't think twice. I assumed it was just a small family dinner. Maybe a birthday, maybe a promotion, something simple. When I arrived at the restaurant he had chosen, I was greeted with warm smiles and the faint clink of glasses. But there was something odd about the setup. The hostess handed me a small envelope and said, "Here's your name tag." I opened it and froze. Printed in neat letters were the words, "Do not recognize him." I blinked, looked at the waiter, and then at my dad. He smiled nervously from the corner of the room. "Go on, wear it," he said, as if this made perfect sense. Inside, the restaurant was packed. I could see a few of my distant relatives I barely knew, friends of my parents, and a handful of people whose faces were familiar but names escaped me. Everyone was glancing at me, some with curious expressions. I slipped the name tag onto my chest, feeling an odd mix of embarrassment and curiosity. "Do I really have to?" I whispered to my dad. He chuckled. "Just go with it. You'll see. Trust me." I took a deep breath and walked into the main area. As soon as I entered, people started greeting me politely, calling me by the name printed on the tag, a name that wasn't mine. "Oh, you must be Mark. I've heard so much about you," one older man said, shaking my hand enthusiastically. I nodded, murmured a thank you, and forced a smile. My dad was watching me from a corner table, his eyes twinkling. I still had no idea what was happening. Soon, the evening took an even stranger turn. One by one, people began sharing stories about me, or rather the mark on my name tag. They recounted things I had never done, places I had never been, and achievements I didn't claim. Some stories were funny, some downright embarrassing, but all delivered with such sincerity that the room erupted in laughter and applause at all the wrong moments. At first, I felt humiliated. How could my dad allow this? But then I noticed something. I wasn't the only one laughing, everyone was enjoying themselves, the way a crowd enjoys theater or an unexpected joke. And slowly, I started to see the purpose. Finally, after an hour of mingling as someone else, my dad stood up, tapped his glass, and called for everyone's attention. "Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I wanted to do something a little different for my son. He works so hard, often under stress, and rarely gets the recognition he deserves. Tonight, we celebrate him, but with a twist." He walked over to me, beaming. "You've been Mark tonight. Everyone has seen a version of you they think they know. Now, I want you to step into your own name and share who you really are." The waiter handed me a fresh name tag. This time, it had my real name, printed boldly, James Parker. The shift was immediate. As I introduced myself properly, telling small truths about my life, my work, and my quirks, the room responded differently. Laughter turned into applause, teasing became genuine admiration, and for the first time that evening, I felt fully recognized. Afterward, my dad leaned over and whispered, "Sometimes, people only see the version you let them see. Tonight, you reminded them, and maybe yourself, who you really are." I laughed, a little sheepishly, still processing everything. The rest of the evening was filled with warmth, storytelling, and genuine celebration. People who had initially called me Mark came up to shake my hand, apologize for the confusion, and share a new story about the real me. By the end of the night, I realized what my dad had done. It wasn't just a prank. It was a lesson, a reminder that identity isn't what others perceive. It's what you own, embrace, and share when the moment matters most. As we left the restaurant, I hugged my dad. "You really surprised me this time," I said. He smiled. "Good. Life's better when you don't take it too seriously. And sometimes, the best way to see yourself clearly is to see yourself through other people's eyes, even if it's a little confusing at first." That night, I went home feeling lighter than I had in months. I had laughed, been embarrassed, and finally been celebrated, not as someone else, but as myself. And for the first time in a long time, I truly felt seen.